Welcome to Federation CJA's 360 podcast, the pulse of Montreal's Jewish community.
This is episode 46, recorded on June 19th, 2025. I'm Glenn J. Nashin. My usual co-host, Paola Samuel, is on her way back from Israel. We'll hear about her visit and her rescue mission shortly. For now, I'm joined in studio by my temporary co-host, Dan Laxer, who's with me today. Welcome, Dan.
Hi, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
In this episode, Jews and Jazz, we'll hear from so-called Josh Dolgin and the Paul McCartney of jingles, Ian Cooney.
And we'll have two reports from Israel with Paola Samuel, plus reports on young entrepreneurs and a visit to Montreal by Rachel Goldberg Polin and John Polin, and so much more with podcast reporter Jordan Stupler.
And Jewish Thoughts with Mindy Sarna Zobin
after this.
So Dan, we're living through unprecedented times. Things are changing literally by the hour, by the minute, and we're receiving new information of what's going on. And it's stressful for the Montreal Jewish community in particular. We've got lots of friends, family, relatives, staff members, colleagues that are in Israel trying to come back. We talked about that at the top with regard to our normal host, Paola, who's making her way back from Israel now. She's in Cyprus as we record. We've got 2,400 birthright students, young adults that are either out or on their way of getting out of Israel. That's organized through Birthright Worldwide, North American. Many took a ship from Israel to Cyprus, including Paola, including my daughter, who was on Birthright as well. These are incredible times.
Yeah, absolutely, and a lot of families are very concerned. I have an email update from. I get updates from Anthony Housefather, and he mentioned that he has been speaking regularly with our own Yair Slack here at Federation CJA, and he wrote in the email that Yair, with his team, has done an exceptional job helping young adults on Federation trips find their way home. And he also mentioned David Cooper at CJA, who he's connected with. He wrote, several of you have reached out directly. It's important you know you are not alone. It's an incredibly difficult time to be in a conflict zone or to have a loved one in one.
He's actually a parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Emergency Management within the Public Safety Division. And I know that in an email yesterday to the community, Yair Slack called on the government to do more to repatriate Canadians, and in particular our Montrealers out of Israel.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got our Journey of Hope, which is the only directly organized Federation mission that's, as the time of this recording, is still in Jerusalem. There's 79 people there, which mostly kids, and chaperones, a couple Holocaust survivors, and others. We heard yesterday in a special Israel at War episode of this podcast from the co-chairs, Marnie Zygmunt Stern and from Dov Woolman, that the kids are holding up remarkably well, showing resilience, showing young leadership, and they're really so proud of these kids for keeping it all together under very difficult circumstances. I'd spoken to my daughter several times, who was in Jerusalem, and every night, 2-3 times going down to the bomb shelter in the underbelly of the hotels to seek shelter. This is draining for Canadian kids who are just not used to this kind of life.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the resilience you're talking about of the Canadians who are there, I'm sure they're getting that from the Israelis, because I follow Eitan Chetayat, who was a guest on this podcast. I follow him on Instagram, and he posts videos when they're in the shelters at night, but he also posts videos during the day, and it's interesting. They all run to the shelters at night, but in the day, it's, well, I guess as whatever Israelis refer to as normal life. You know, there was one video he posted where his kids wanted to play Lego, and he had a Lego set at work. So he was on his bicycle in the middle of the day going to work just to pick up a box of Lego. And yes, he had to step over broken glass at the office, but it's as normal a thing to do for Israelis. And I think that that's where a lot of the Canadians there are getting their resilience from.
So I mentioned we did a special emergency episode yesterday, so it's up on our site now. Wherever you're listening or watching this podcast, you can tune in and look for the previous one, episode 45, where our president and CEO, Yirs Lack, has a discussion with Professor Gil Troy. Many Montrealers are familiar with Gil Troy, previously a McGill professor and a professor of American history, now living for many years in Jerusalem, for some real deep thought, some real perspective on what the Jewish people, and in particular Israelis, are living through right now. Mm-hmm. So as well, again, the situation is very fluid, moving very quickly. Just this morning, we're learning about missile strikes on Beersheba. Beersheba is the sister community of the Montreal Jewish community, and very unfortunately, direct strike on Soroka Hospital. Mm-hmm. Soroka Hospital is the hospital of the entire south of Israel. It services 1 million people in the south. Heavy damage to some of the buildings, and we're learning as well that patients were brought down into the underground of the hospital. And just by coincidence, in 2002, Federation CJA had a campaign as part of the Second Intifada when Beersheba and Israel was under attack, and the Federation helped to fund these underground emergency units that people are going to today in 2025. So that is basically our chit chat for today about what's going on. It's fluid, it's tragic, it's concerning, and we'll continue to monitor the situation. And we'd invite our viewers, watchers, to look at federationcja.org to find out how they can contribute and they can help out, because surely much more assistance will be needed by the Jewish people, the Israeli people, going forward, and especially when we're talking about our sister community in Beersheba. So again, to please look at federationcja.org to see how you can help.
Last week, Paola Samuel was actually featured on the CTV National News. They tracked her down as a Canadian in Israel. Let's watch that clip now.
In Tel Aviv, this Canadian is stuck in the middle of it.
And I saw what I thought were missiles. I can't be sure, but there was about 6 of them, like, going over in the sky.
Montrealer Paola Samuel is on a volunteering trip to Israel's capital. She spent most of last night in a bomb shelter.
And at 3 a.m., the sirens, that's when you saw the bombardment happening. The sirens went off in the air, and we had a minute and a half. So we all grabbed our stuff and ran downstairs and sat there. I think, you're just sitting there, you don't know.
Scheduled to leave Tel Aviv Monday. She's not sure when she'll get home now. The airspace has been shut down until further notice.
I mean, we don't know what's going to happen tonight. I don't know if there's going to be a siren while we're talking to each other. So I set up here, like I'm talking to you here, because I know where the hotel is. I know where I can run to. It's not my hotel, but I know I can get there in 90 seconds.
The Montreal International Jazz Festival, iconic in Montreal, of course, is coming up from June 26th to July 5th. This will be the 45th edition. So we thought, what better time to talk? Jews and jazz. We're exploring the vibrant intersection of Jewish culture and music, and we're diving into the world of Josh Dolgin, better known as So-Called.
A true innovator, a Montrealer with a unique approach to sound, So-Called seamlessly fuses hip-hop with klezmer, jazz, and other eclectic sounds, creating music that defies boundaries while celebrating Jewish heritage. From sampling old Yiddish records to collaborating with jazz legends, he's reshaping how we think about tradition and modernity in music. Does any of this sound right?
Close. Hey, why not? Sure.
And you're also a McGill University course lecturer, so to start off, welcome. And do we call you Josh or do we call you So-Called?
You call me Professor.
Professor.
I love it.
Whatever. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Okay. We're going into Jewish humor and the intersection with music now
Absolutely.
already.
Okay.
So,
always.
Josh, welcome to Studio 5.
Great to be here. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah.
So for our listeners and viewers who don't know So-Called, give us a little bit of the background. What's this all about?
Oy. Okay. Well, I guess I'm kind of getting middle-aged right about now, but when I was a kid, I started playing piano. I started, classical piano. Eventually, my mother allowed me to study jazz piano, and that was very liberating for me, very exciting to not just be reading off a page and to be learning about improvisation, about harmony. and that was in high school. And then I started to like want to participate in the music of my time, and at that time, this was hip hop and this was rap music in high school, and hip hop and rap were actually at the time not really mainstream. They were still kind of underground. It wasn't. There were the rocker kids, and there was like there's heavy metal kids and new wave, even kind of REM listening people. But hip hop was this weird subculture from America, from really Black America, from African American culture. And so I was this Jewish kid, white, growing up in rural Quebec. I grew up in a little town called Chelsea, which is just north of Ottawa. The only Jewish kid in the school, the only Jewish family really in the town, other than the veterinarian. And anyway, so I wanted to participate in the music of the day. I did jazz. I love jazz. I love classical music, but those were musics of another time, and the music that was talking about what was happening right now on quote unquote on the streets. Was this rap music, this hip hop music, which was sort of an updating of rhythm and blues and jazz and black music with new technologies, and old sounds, referencing older sounds, but a new kind of fresh beat. So I wanted to participate in that. I started to make hip hop, make rap beats.
And when you say high school, are you going back to the days of Grandmaster Flash, or not quite that far?
I'm not quite that far. I grew up. I think I'm lucky to have grown up in a golden age of hip hop, which was really the early '90s, which was really, Dr. Dre, the Wu-Tang Clan, De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, things like that. It was post that first wave of the invention of hip hop, and it really got kind of refined. And all these amazing artists and sort of sub-movements of hip-hop emerged. Yeah. So it was an amazing time to be into that music, because every new record that was coming out was just mind-blowing. It was just these incredible classics. Now we can even look back and think they were kind of classics at the time. So-called is my sort of funny hip-hop name. People have these sort of nom de plume, these pen names. Actually, now as a lecturer at McGill and studying Yiddish culture, I see that this comes from a tradition. Actually, there's a tradition of Yiddish poets with pen names. Like all the most famous Yiddish poets had these other funny kind of names, like even Sholem Aleichem. That wasn't his real name. So anyway, so as a hip hop guy, you need to pick up or be given some nickname. I was called Heavy J in high school. I was not heavy. I was not physically nor musically heavy, but I had this Heavy J name, and then eventually started working with a rapper from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, from Halifax, and really from Africville, like from that sort of area of Halifax, who started to call me so-called Heavy J because I wasn't really heavy. And then eventually he dropped the Heavy J, and I became so-called. And I started making beats. That's what so-called is. It was me trying to participate with hip-hop and really African-American black culture. And that is a long story. That was 35 years ago. So now in 35 years, I have made 1 million records, and I produced other artists, many records, and I write musicals, and I sing with a string quartet or with a big band, or whatever. I'm a busy artist, and in order to be an artist who can, buy dinner, you have to have a ton of projects. So I do, and then for a wacky twist to this whole so-called story, last year I was tapped by a fellow professor, a real professor at McGill, to come and start teaching a class about the history of Eastern European Yiddish music at McGill. So that's like unexpected, but that's like really what my focus is these days, is getting those classes together.
So where did the Jewish music part come into your life, particularly the klezmer?
Good question. That's why you're the host.
There we go.
Well, so as a hip-hop producer, it always felt a little weird for me to be this white Jewish kid in Quebec writing rap songs. trying to sound and emulate Dr. Dre or the RZA, you know, and using African American vocabulary and R&B, disco, funk, jazz, using that as the sort of the building blocks of the hip hop that I was making. That felt a little disingenuous, even though I love that music. It's sort of my favorite music. Funk is absolutely my favorite music of all time, like genre-wise, James Brown and Sly and the Family Stone and all that stuff. But even so, hip-hop is also about saying who you are and telling your story and keeping it real. So I wanted to explore that. Who am I? And who am I musically? What are my roots? And as a assimilated Jewish family, the music of our family, I didn't grow up with Yiddish at all. I think you guys grew up in Montreal,
Really? Yep.
went to Yiddish, even were involved in Yiddish schools.
JPPS boys.
Yeah,
Gaelic
absolutely.
boys.
Amazing. So I was not exposed to that at all. My parents are from Winnipeg. Their parents, of course, are from Romania, from Ukraine, from Czech Republic, from the Pale of settlement, from Eastern Europe. They spoke Yiddish, but when they got to Canada and post-war, we all know the story of this sort of movement of assimilation, of Jews wanting to fit in, Jews losing their language, a lot of the traditions, a lot of the cultural traditions. We're lost. There's no more Yiddish cinema. There's no more Yiddish newspapers and Yiddish radio and Yiddish music. So for a kid like me, born in the late 70s, there was not a whiff of Yiddish-kite.
Particularly not in a place like Chelsea.
Exactly. And the only place that it would be in Chelsea would be in my parents' record collection.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it Chelsea?
Chelsea.
Oh. Are you a fan of Cheskie's?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, okay. You know they just moved.
I do.
Yeah, fancy new place. You should do a piece about it. Okay. So I started, exploring my parents' record collection because that's really where hip-hop comes from. Hip-hop comes from these mostly Jamaican immigrants, actually, looking at their parents' record collections and then cutting up those records into new, funky, technologically sort of hip ways, and looping old sounds from their own musical past. So I started to look, instead of just looking at James Brown records or really black music, I started to let's see if I can put some of myself and my story into this hip hop music. So like most assimilated Jews of my parents' generation, they didn't have any Yiddish records. They didn't have Moshe Oisher records and Aaron Lebedev and Hasidic Nigunim. That wasn't in their wheelhouse. They had the Four Freshmen. They had maybe Glenn Miller. They had some light jazz. But they did have one Yiddish record, and that was Theodore Bickel.
Sure.
So Theodore Bickel is one of these artists who actually managed to sort of keep Yiddish alive and sold billions of records. If you go to Salvation Armies, you'll find some Theodore Bickel records. I wound up working with him for a while. Mm-hmm. It was a great honor to work with this incredible Hollywood legend. So anyway, I started to look for sounds that would tell a different story and be a bit more real for me. And so, okay, Jewish music. Let's start looking for Jewish music. Okay, this Theodore Bickel record that I did grow up with, there's some cool little sounds in that. I can grab that and put it in the hip hop. So yeah, and then this also coincided with me moving to Montreal, getting into really sample-based hip hop. Sampling is taking old sounds digitally and using them again. It's not really a lot of how hip-hop is made anymore, but it's really one of the big roots of hip-hop was taking old records and actually using the old sounds and looping them and layering them in new ways. So I'm getting into hip-hop. I want to represent myself. I moved to Montreal to go to McGill, and I start looking for records to sample. And I start going to Salvation Armies and basements and attics and garbages around the plateau and around Mile End. And I start to find Yiddish records. and records cost 25 cents. This is at the point where people are throwing out their record collections. They think CDs have come to replace them, and they don't need their records anymore. There's no internet, so I start to find Yiddish records in the garbage, really. Like I mentioned, Aaron Lebedeff, Moishe Oisher, Mickey Katz, Dave Terrace, Abe Schwartz. I've never heard of these people. They're not in the public discourse. They're not in any discourse. You don't hear them in the soundtrack of a movie. You don't hear them on the radio.
Unless you steep yourself into that culture. You're not
or you're born into it, or you've grew up with these old records or these names. I didn't. So okay, 25 cents. That's worth a
Such
quarter.
a deal.
So you can leave with a pile of records for $5. Now records are hip again, and they cost $60 each. Well, I was finding them in the garbage, okay? And I sort of don't want to pay $60 for a record at this point. Well, I also have 10,000 records in my apartment, so I don't need any more records. So I take these records home, and I'm looking for breaks. Breaks are really the heart of hip-hop. Break dancing was dancing to these little moments of rupture in a record where just the drummer plays for a measure, and then you loop that with 2 copies of the same record. You juggle the beats. Okay, so I'm looking for these little moments that I can sample and loop, and lo and behold, in a Yiddish record, like Aaron Lebedeff, who's this amazing Yiddish theater singer, famous for Romania, which
Romania, Romania.
Exactly, etc.
Nice.
Okay, don't quit your day job.
Okay.
Between each verse is a funky little break. So it was sort of on purpose that I wanted to explore myself, my roots and my culture, but it was also just it really worked. It wasn't really that much of a force fit. These records were full of cool little sounds that I could use, and the more I looked into it, I just kept finding interesting melodies and rhythms and riffs and subjects and poetry. And at first, it's just I need these breaks. I'm trying to make funky beats for rappers, but eventually I fell in love with the music.
So, Josh, before we run out of time, let's do a couple of your favorites. Favorite Yiddish music, nigun?
My favorite, just things to listen to, hot tips.
Yep.
Okay, Irving Fields is famous for a record called Bagels and Bongos, which is a fusion of Yiddish melodies with Latin rhythms. Came out in 1958. Amazing record, Irving Fields. Other great artists to check out. I mean, it's a long story. If you're really curious and you're 19, you should come take my class at McGill. But otherwise, just off the top of my head, Dave Terrace was the master Yiddish clarinetist. He was called the Jewish Benny Goodman. And his record Tanz might be a great place to start. If you also in the spirit of the jazz festival.
Favorite cantor?
Leib Glantz, I think.
Favorite Montreal cantor?
Well, it's hard to say because they're all my pals, but of course Gideon is pretty darn good.
Favorite, because he does the Montreal Canadian games as well.
Obviously.
Okay. Favorite klezmer band?
Favorite klezmer band in the world would be this guy Michael Winograd, who plays really the most traditional. Even though I'm an iconoclast freak who makes hip hop and popular music, I'm kind of a traditionalist too. I like it when it's real. I like that real stuff.
Top names, Montreal Jewish musicians.
Okay, so there's a really fun jam on Mondays. It's not really a jam, but it's an ad hoc group of musicians that meet at Café Dépanneur on Bernard on Mondays between 3 and 5, which is the perfect flaneur, unemployed or underemployed Montreal kind of scene. And there's this awesome violinist, he's from Syria, not Jewish, who fell in love with klezmer music. And he's been leading a klezmer jam for about 8 years. And it's just a really nice hang. Sort of the Yiddish world comes to hang out there every Monday. His name is Zafar Mamili, and he's got a band called Jena Welt, which is, I think Jena Welt is my favorite Montreal klezmer band.
Give us the 60-second version of what your class is all about.
So, two classes. One of them is called Introduction Topics in Jewish Music. I'm not talking about all Jewish music in my class. I've narrowed it down. I'm going to only talk about something that I kind of know about, or at least something I can kind of learn enough about to teach, which is Eastern European Yiddish music. And in the class, we look at really, how did the Jews get to the Pale of Settlement? How did their Yiddish music and culture develop over 1,000 years? We look at song, which could be art song, folk song, or theater music, klezmer music, which is this instrumental dance celebration music, mostly for weddings, cantorial music, and Hasidic nigunim. And then we even try to look at things like Irving Field's post-war Yiddish music, what's happened since really the destruction of Yiddish culture at the source in Eastern Europe.
Amazing. It sounds great. I think you should bring it to seniors as well, maybe over at the Cummings Jewish Center for Seniors.
Anytime.
We'll have to see about that. As we close off, why don't you introduce your favorite piece that you've produced, and that's what we're going to close with.
Okay, and just in the spirit of the Jazz Festival, this song features my hero, Fred Wesley, who was James Brown's arranger and lead soloist, also played with Parliament Funkadelic, with Ray Charles, with Ike and Tina Turner. He's a real jazz legend. He's 83 years old. And I did a musical with him. Actually, I hire him always to write overtures. Whenever I write a musical, I've written 6 musicals. I write to Fred, I send him all the melodies, and he writes me an overture. He wrote the overture for Tales from Odessa.
Right. Okay.
Which is insane. He wrote for the cymbalom and clarinet. Anyway, I did a musical it's only been presented in Germany in Hamburg. It's called The Season, and I've done a series. There's 4 seasons. So the second season starred Fred Wesley, and this song features Fred not only playing his trombone but also singing, and it's really kind of a klezmer blues. I tried to take klezmer modes and klezmer chord changes.
What do you call that, Surus?
No, I call that a Vergnügen, which is a pleasure. Anyway, it's called The Song I Never Got to Sing.
These are melodies I'll never hear. This is a win I'll never fight. These are words I never got to say, a darkness that I never got to light.
Josh, it's been a Vergnügen to meet you. Thanks for coming into studio today. Of course, our listeners and viewers can find you online.
Sure. SoCalledMusic.com or at SoCalled Entertainment on Instagram.
Schönen Dank, Abigazint.
A große schönen Dank. Sei gesinnt.
Our podcast reporter, Jordan Stupler, joins us in studio now. Jordan, you attended the Entrepreneurs Week as well as the CJA closing event featuring Rachel Goldberg Polin and John Polin. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's right, Glenn. Pro Montreal Entrepreneurs, or we like to call them around here PME. They celebrated 25 years of innovation and entrepreneurship last month as part of its Entrepreneur Week. It all kicked off with an evening of networking, designed to spark authentic conversations and forge long-term relationships within the business world. And this all went down at the Stingray offices on Wellington, and they had roundtables, strategic conversations with professionals. So attendees really had the chance to not only connect with other businesses, but also even grow their own ventures. The celebrations continued the next night. There was a panel of thought-provoking speakers who shared their expertise on business transition and strategic planning. This was at the KPMG offices on de Maisonneuve. The panel featured experts in family business succession, entrepreneurs who've guided companies through great transformation and growth. This includes Daniel Bloomer, Navi Cohen, who built and sold their business, Revo Technologies, innovative custom-fit Bluetooth earphones company, to Logitech. And then Entrepreneur Week wrapped up with an action-packed afternoon here at the Goldberg Conference Center, filled with influencer panels, PME success stories, practical workshops, which focused specifically on sales and AI tools. There was an all-female lunch panel of founders sharing how they built profitable brands of their own, opportunities to learn how to leverage AI technology, hands-on sessions designed to help businesses streamline operations, automate repetitive tasks, and boost productivity. So there was a lot going on all throughout a jam-packed week. It was a hugely successful series of events led by our manager of entrepreneurship here at Federation CJA, Catherine Korakakis. And if you missed out on Entrepreneur Week, there's no need to worry, because coming up on October 20th, PME is going to be hosting its Promies Awards, which is recognizing Montreal's most outstanding Jewish entrepreneurs. The creators of the PME Fund, Jimmy Alexander and Stephen Bronfman, are going to be honored as part of this special evening. So stay tuned for more information on how you can secure your tickets and be part of this very special event.
And since you're on the topic of PME, we happen to be in studio with Dan Laxer, who hosts the PME podcast. So this is your chance to give a plug.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called Minding Your Business, the PME Pro Montreal Entrepreneurs podcast, which I co-host with Catherine. And if you're curious at all about Revels and Daniel Bloomer and Navi Cohen, they were guests on a recent episode. And Stephen and Jimmy were the guests on the very first episode, and you can listen to that podcast wherever you get your podcast, wherever you listen to this podcast.
And Stephen Bronfman and Jimmy Alexander are the founders of the Pro Montreal Entrepreneurs some 25 years ago.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So thanks for that intervention, and we're going to go back to Jordan now, who's got a serious, and we've got lots of heart-wrenching events going on, but this one in particular with the Polin Goldbergs.
Yeah, really emotional evening here at Federation CJA. Rachel Goldberg Polin and her husband John, they shared memories of their son Hirsch. I think everyone knows the story by now, but I mean, just to refresh, I mean, he was kidnapped by Hamas terrorists on October 7th and ultimately murdered after 328 days of torture and starvation and captivity. So they were here in a Q&A with moderator Lisa Singer-Miller in front of nearly 1,000 community members at the Goldberg Conference Center, and I think there wasn't a dry eye in the house that night. I mean, Rachel spoke about the night of Friday, October 6th, the final moments she and John spent with Hirsch at a friend's house. It was just after they had been at Shabbat services at their local synagogue, and she shared the story about the final kiss goodbye, the final send-off goodbye for what became the last moments that they spent together.
And I remember looking at my watch when he said goodbye to us, and he kissed John, and he kissed me, and he hugged our hostess, which I remember thinking, what a good boy. And then he turned around in the doorway and he looked at me and said, love you, see you tomorrow. And that was 599 nights ago.
And beyond just his tragic death, Rachel and John shared stories about their son's life and just how lucky they were to have had Hirsch in their lives for 23 years.
Hirsch was a normal person. He was not perfect. He was the perfect son for me.
John also explained why they've decided to continue their worldwide advocacy efforts in calling for the return of all the remaining hostages, and this even long after Hirsch's funeral.
So there are a few reasons that we keep on going. One is we know the pain of being in this fight and having the outcome that we've had. And we say anything we can possibly do to ensure that another family does not end up in the same outcome, we must do it.
Now, despite the immense pain and grief that the family continues to endure, Rachel still considers herself quite fortunate, as you'll hear from her right now.
I had a son, and I loved him, and he knew it. And he loved me, and I knew it. And I was blessed.
And so this event, it was called the Evening of Recognition. It also served as our official campaign closing event. Also featured moving performances from Israeli singers Michal Gringlik and Valerie Hamadi as well.
Thanks for that, Jordan. And you'll be back in a few minutes with a piece on another heart-wrenching meeting with a very inspirational parent who also lost their son on October 7th.
We're pleased to welcome Mindy Sarna Zobin back onto the podcast. Mindy is our kind of go-to person for Federation CJA for Jewish learning and deep thought. And in this episode, we've invited her in to discuss the 3 weeks and why it reminds us to be unified as a people. So Mindy, tell us, what are the 3 weeks?
So I was always sad growing up because my birthday always fell during the 3 weeks. And the 3 weeks traditionally is a time of mourning. And it's a time of we're limiting our celebrations because of all the calamities and tragedies that have happened to us throughout Jewish history. So what they are is it's dates in the middle that usually fall out in July, maybe extend, depending on how it falls, into August. And it starts
because of the Jewish calendar.
Yes, exactly. And it starts off with a fast day, the 17th of Tammuz, and then it ends with a fast day, the 9th of Av. And between
Tisha B'Av.
Tisha B'Av,
Okay.
Exactly. So it's traditionally a time where historically we've had really horrible things happen to the Jewish people during this time. Most notably and most memorably, both of our temples were destroyed during that period. But we also have other traditions that Moses smashed the tablets during that time upon coming down from Har Sinai and seeing the Jews dancing around a golden calf. And everything all the way to the Holocaust. We know that historical dates pertaining to tragedies during the Holocaust happened during the 3 weeks as well. So it's not a good time for the Jews, and we're very committed to memory. And because of that, we traditionally, most Jews don't hold simchas during that time. We try to avoid or get engaged or not hold weddings during that time period because it's considered bad luck period. We also avoid anything major during that time, like buying a house or going to court or buying a car or making any large decisions during that time. I remember my husband also, years ago, he found a great van when our family was expanding. And he went to the guy, we were buying it secondhand, and he went to the guy out in Dollard somewhere, and he goes, I know this sounds so weird, but can I give you a promissory note, a promise to purchase that I'm going to, he found it actually like early July, and it was falling into the 3 weeks. And he's like, it sounds so weird. I'll give you a deposit, a promise that I'm going to buy it, but I'll actually acquire it from you after the 3 weeks are over. Is that okay? And the guy was like, hey, I don't get it, but sure, whatever. And they got on well, and they went to the mechanic together just to check everything out. And everything worked out. But the guy really respected the fact that he was telling him exactly it's kind of a bad luck period. Do you mind if we just get over that hump? So in other words, we really don't plan anything big for ourselves during that time.
And when does it fall this year, 2025?
I actually didn't look beforehand,
Okay.
but I think it's the first or just into the second week of July,
Okay.
the 17th of Tammuz, which was, it kicks off the 3 weeks during that time because that's when the walls of Jerusalem were breached and the beginnings of the attacks started to happen. And we can only imagine all the things that were transpiring during that time. A person only has to read a part of Jeremiah or Isaiah to really see the whole scene of what was happening during the destruction, the pillaging and the murders and everything that was going on, the war that was happening at that time, and the Jews were trying
So
to.
let me ask you, how does that tie into what we're experiencing in 2024, 2025?
Yeah.
It seems to be relevant.
Well, I think the message, as you know, we've all been trying to pump out, is that the unity of the Jewish people is so important to our nation and to the heartbeat of our nation. One of the sages often refer to why was the Beit HaMikdash destroyed? Why were our temples destroyed? And very often, you know, obviously there are logistics and real play reasons why it happened, but one of the things we do know from history, and especially around October 7th time most recently, is that when Jews are not unified, that's when our enemies are kind of planning their licking their chops, so to speak. And we know that we have to be unified as a people. You can have unity without uniformity. we are God's chosen people, and if we truly believe that, we don't all have to be on the same page, but we all have to feel like we're one body with one heart, and there are different limbs. We all feel differently, we all think a little differently, but we're all part of the same guf, as we say in Hebrew.
Same body.
Same body.
As we wrap up, maybe just an extra word on Tisha B'Av, the significance, the importance, what's it about?
It's truly a day of mourning. A lot of survivors from the Holocaust assigned that day as they didn't have a yortzeit because they didn't know when their parents or their loved ones actually died. So they used Tisha B'Av as a day of the yortzeit. And it's observed by fasting and sitting on low chairs. We typically go to synagogue to read a very moving Megillah. And, it's a day of really taking account of what it means to be a Jew. We commit to memory. But there's also a difference between memory and history, right? Our history is a glorious one we have to pass on to our children and be super proud of. But that means committing ourselves to the memory of everything that has happened to us along the way. So
interesting. We're going to help out our listeners and viewers if you will supply us with some additional reading and the actual dates. We'll put it in our show notes. And I want to thank you for coming in, Mindy. This has really been interesting.
Thanks always for having me.
Sign up for Federation CJA urgent community alerts through WhatsApp to receive urgent, accurate information on security issues. Find out how to keep safe through timely messages on breaking developments. If you're on WhatsApp, you can be among the first to find out. Sign up at federationcja.org/urgent alert.
Inscrivez-vous au message d'alerte d'urgence pour la communauté de la Fédération CJA sur WhatsApp pour recevoir de l'information précise sur des enjeux de sécurité nécessitant une intervention immédiate. Apprenez à assurer votre sécurité grâce à des messages pertinents sur les dossiers d'actualité. Si vous êtes sur WhatsApp, vous pourriez être parmi les premiers à être mis au courant. Inscrivez-vous à federationcja.org/alerte urgente.
Ian Cooney is an award-winning jingle composer and producer, known as one of the industry's top creative talents, and has created some of the most catchy jingles, some you've likely heard before.
Called, it says here, the Paul McCartney of jingles, Ian Cooney has a real gift for finding the musicality in brand names and creating just the right musical identity for each advertiser. For over 4 decades, 400 jingles have been produced, and Ian has won numerous advertising awards in Canada, the United States, and the UK. And as I'm saying that, I'm hearing so many of them in my head right now.
I hear them too. Yeah. Ian, welcome into studio.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Great to be
before
here.
we get into your jingles, where did you start? You had the Rockefellers. You were in a band.
I started basically playing in bands at 9 years old. I was like everybody, all the other guys around the world. I mean, we all saw. My uncle called me. I was 9 years old. He said, the Beatles are going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I went, what's Beatles? I didn't know anything. I wanted to go play baseball. Do I have to watch it? And I watched the thing, and like me and 50 other guys, probably thought, oh, that's a good job. Mm-hmm. And, making music and everything. And my father had a music store, and, it sort of worked.
So let's go way back to the time of your parents, your grandparents. What was the Jewish influence in your music, liturgical?
My Zeta used to take me to shul. I was 5 years old. Used to take me to Shomrim Laboker. I mean, so I was hearing cantors and cantorial music. My mother was very involved in sisterhood and synagogue plays and Broadway stuff and Fiddler on the Roof, and that album played on and on and on and over. So I was able to glean a lot of that Yiddishkeit from there. And my mother was like, my mother was a typical Jewish mother. And to the point when she heard my jingles on the air, I never forget, she heard one time, and she wasn't, she wasn't one to brag about it or anything. Her group of friends would say, we just heard, and my mom goes, At the end of the Schrader's jingle, is there a bad piano note? Did you make a mistake? And sure enough, it's like just a little, but it's there. You know, I heard it, and I just, you know, it's part of the thing.
Is there some Jewish influence that's hidden away in some of your jingles and some of your music?
Oh yeah, I mean it's all over. I mean, here's a story. I mean, I went to visit the Morenzos, Peter Morenzos.
Yeah, sure.
And he was opening up a restaurant. He has this new restaurant concept that he was going to do. I said, okay, fine. Where are we going to meet? Meet me on Crescent Street. In the middle, there's like a parking lot. Okay, it's a parking lot. And I'm going, what's it going to be? Noodles. Yeah. What else? No, just like noodles. What about the noodles? Well, from all around the world, all over the place. They're going to have Asian noodles, going to have Italian noodles, going to have, you know, and of course, I'm thinking Lokshin right away. So I'm, you know, and I go, and it's a parking lot. There's nothing there. So I have to imagine all of this stuff. So it was Weinstein and Gavino's.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But Weinstein was like already, hey, Mr. Weinstein, I got to tell you, you know, what, Mr. Gavino, I got an idea. I got a great idea, right? And it's like, it's right out of, I'll just grab my guitar here, but just like, noodles, noodles, Weinstein and Gavino's, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's right out of a bar mitzvah.
It's right,
absolutely.
And in my mind, what I was trying to create was a Jewish wedding and an Italian wedding mashed up together, and it worked.
I remember that jingle. It worked very, very well.
You know.
So your jingles are noted as some of the best ever created. What is the magic of getting into someone's head that it stays there? The song, the jingle, the notion of whatever brand you're building.
I honestly don't know. I mean, it just comes out, and I always think it's Hashem. You know, like,
sure.
You know, it's that it's Hashem really, and I'm just like the vessel where it's coming through, and I'm very luckily it just happens. It just comes out. I seem to have a knack for writing catchy, really catchy melodies. And if they had to line me up, you know, on a wall and say, well, you know, what's the best thing you do, or what's the, you know what I mean? Some people are great bridge players, baseball players, you know, anything. But I think that's, for me, is it.
So have you had a jingle take off in a way that you didn't expect, that perhaps the jingle became more noted than the brand itself that you were trying to promote?
Oh, yeah.
Give us an example.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. When you shop Morilatos, it's a feeling. It's like taking a trip far away.
It's a garden.
It's a market.
It's a pleasure. It's a how are you today? Fruits and vegetables, beautiful, beautiful,
beautiful. Cheese and bread, something magnifico. The garden of the Mediterranean supermarket. Morilatos, you know, something like that.
So what are some of the most iconic that you've ever created that just transcend time?
Shop Schraders save a lot of money. Gonna tell you, honey, they got what you need.
Great clothes for men and boys, top to bottom. Every style, every size, yeah, they got them. Shop Schraders.
From the mover, love of the mill.
Move is a mighty fine move at a price
Can't afford. Well, we pack it, we ship it, we unpack, we set you up. Down the mover, down.
I loved it because of it had that sort of surf guitar. And who was the guy who did Rumble? Link Ray. Yeah.
Well, the story was I wrote it in a pool. I wrote it. The whole idea came. I was in a swimming pool and I was writing it, and I ran over to my phone and I sang whatever was, you know, the original blah blah, and I listened to it and I went, okay. And I was like, I can't present this. There's no way. I don't know why. I just felt like it wasn't quite it. Then I couldn't get it out of my head. Then I got up the next morning and I was singing it, and then I couldn't get it out of my head again. I said, okay, let's work on it.
Some of your newer pieces that you've produced in the last few years that may not be as familiar with, something that stands out for you.
Well, I mean, most of the stuff has been produced, like, you know, now I'm working on I just finished a project for the Quebec government, which is about water conservation. I really can't sing about it now because it's not aired yet.
Okay.
So I can't really do that. But I mean, I've just been doing, your car dealers and pizza and things like that. I haven't done a lot of jingles in the last few years, and I'm only getting back into it now. So it's something that I love to do. I've been performing all over Florida, like country clubs and parties and things like that. Because in addition to the jingle writing, I've been making my living as an entertainer. And it's been busy and it's been good.
So if you're entertaining in South Florida, there must be a strong Jewish component to that entertainment.
Yeah, especially because when I'm in a Jewish milieu, I can throw in songs from Fiddler on the Roof. I can do Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. I can do Hello Mother, Hello Fada, which is not really a Jewish song, but it fits into that.
Of course.
Mold, he was great. My Zelda, my Zelda, my Zelda. He took the money and he ran with the tailor.
I still have the album my parents gave me of that one. I have the vinyl. It's
Really?
Absolutely.
Oh, hang on to that.
It's classic. It's classic. So as we close out this episode, some of your iconic, famous, favorite jingles that you want to play for us.
Oh, I can do this one. Matt LaBona, Matt LaBona, the right mattress at the right price, not any mattress at any price. Matt LaBona, Matt LaBona, Matt LaBona.
The music side of the jingles, I mean, your affinity for old time rock and roll really comes through. But you talked about melodies, but you also tell stories with your jingles. I mean, the one from Meldrum the Mover is a 30-second story. The guy singing says, "Tell 'em, girls." But a Schrader's one that I always loved. We talked earlier about going to camp.
Right.
Is the one where you had kids and what they were singing about were the products that were available, but as campfire songs.
Right.
And as a kid who has been to camp and worked camp, that struck a chord with me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm glad that happened. I'm sure it happened with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like I remember putting in the sound effects because there was a certain part. Socks and underwear with the birds cheep. No, the crickets chirping in the background. Sleeping bags. Some other product, all with name tags, trapdoor pajamas,
nice,
real cool sneakers, they got whatever, but you know what, the Yiddishkeit and the Jewish, it's so part of me, it's so in my heart, it's in my being. I wrote for Rabbi Mendel Marazzo. He was doing a golf tournament, and I wrote him a jingle just for fun, which I actually sang on CJAD one time because I was being interviewed by Andrew Carter. And it was something like, "Come everybody play golf with the rabbis. La 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 la. Everybody swing. Hey, la 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 la." Like that kind of thing.
I feel like I'm trapped in my younger self with you on CJD and hearing his commercials. So as we round out, the Montreal International Jazz Festival is coming up. If you were featured on the stage, let's hear what you would be playing for Jewish Montreal.
Lester's is the real old-fashioned deli, the same like it's been for over 50 years. La 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 la.
and thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, my
Wish
pleasure.
you great success going forward with new jingles that we can't wait to hear.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, and good luck with the podcast. This is great.
This is a safety reminder from Federation CJA. Your vigilance helps keep our community safe. If you see something, say something. In an emergency, call 911 immediately. When it is safe to do so, report incidents on the Community Security Hotline at 514-343-4343. Or use our online form at federationcja.org, where you can also upload photos or videos related to an incident. Your contribution helps us gather critical information that strengthens our collective safety. Stay aware, stay engaged, stay safe.
Ceci est un rappel de sécurité de la Fédération CJA. Si vous voyez quelque chose, dites-le. En cas d'urgence, composez immédiatement le 911 et signalez tout incident à la police puis au réseau de sécurité communautaire au 514-343-4343 ou visitez federationcja.org pour signaler un incident en ligne. Votre vigilance contribue à la sécurité de notre communauté.
Our podcast reporter, Jordan Stupler, is back. The two of us recently had the opportunity to meet with Rabbi Doron Perez, the CEO of Mizrahi World Movement. Jordan, what did you take from this meeting, this encounter?
That's right, Glenn. As you mentioned, we had the great fortune, along with other members of Federation CJA staff, to hear from the executive chairman of the World Mizrahi Movement, Rabbi Doron Perez. It was a special lunch and learn session that was organized, and his story was equally moving and inspirational. Rabbi Perez and his entire family's world was flipped upside down on October 7th. His son, Captain Daniel Perez, who was murdered by Hamas terrorists while serving as a tank commander near Kibbutz Nachal Oz along the Gaza border. Daniel fought valiantly for over 2 hours, 2 hours and 16 minutes to be exact, saving countless lives before he was killed.
I have to admit that I thought Daniel's primary motivation was self-actualization and self-fulfillment, personal achievement, and not selflessness for a greater cause. How wrong I was.
His body was then taken into Gaza, taken hostage, along with 2 fellow crew members, and he has yet to return home. Now, 163 days after October 7th, Daniel was officially declared dead, and this was even despite the family not having the body. But the family decided to go ahead with a funeral, a burial, and the Shiva, which Rabbi Perez said gave the family much-needed solace and strength as they are now able to make regular visits to his grave on Har Herzl in Jerusalem.
Daniel Ish Chamudot, Daniel the Beloved. That was what we wrote both on his bar mitzvah invitation and sadly on his grave. We also engraved 3 additional phrases that we believed encompassed who he was. He stuck to the mission at hand, fought with bravery, and saved many lives.
Now there's another angle to this story. Daniel's brother Yonatan was also injured on October 7th. He was shot in the leg. He made a quick recovery, but I guess the silver lining was Yonatan was set to be married 10 days later to his wife Galia, and the wedding did end up proceeding. And just 2 days after Purim, the couple also welcomed a son, Uri Daniel, the middle name, of course, in memory of the uncle that he would never come to know. So, Daniel's legacy also obviously lives on through his nephew and also through Rabbi Doron Perez, who talks about his son every chance he gets, and also the special bond that he had with his brother Yonatan. Have a listen.
Daniel was the most energetic, ADHD, fun-loving teenager you could ever imagine. I think he was the happiest when he was with his friends. He had so many friends from every stage of life, from South Africa, Israel, religious, secular backgrounds, all types. Daniel, I think, was the best friend you could have, so beloved and so invested. His older brother Yonatan and him were the best of friends, close since they were small. Growing up together, they would play, have fun, and fight with each other. And indeed, when they grew older, They connected about challenges in the army, life, and leadership. Deep bonds of brotherly love.
I would say that notwithstanding the deep and horrific tragedy that Rabbi Perez and his family went through, I found it to be very, very inspirational, motivational, and clearly he's a deep thinker and a profound thought leader in the Jewish world. We should include in the show notes a link to the full interview that he did and any other material that we have on him so others can follow him as well.
Definitely. And I think you asked a good question, and I kind of touched on it before. You asked Rabbi Perez in the session about how if he holds out hope, I guess, as a rabbi, if he holds out hope that his son will walk through the door, will come back alive. And it was very interesting, the whole process that he mentioned about how they go through, there's the Shin Bet, there's the chief rabbi of the army. All these different bodies are involved in terms of figuring out, determining with 100% certainty that even without the body, this person is no longer alive. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, I was inspired by his response to my question, quite frankly, because I didn't expect it. And ultimately what he said is he has faith, and his beliefs and his faith lead him forward and allow him to have that closure and to move forward and to plan the rest of his life and Jewish life even more so. So thanks for that report, Jordan.
Thank you.
And as we were saying off the top of the podcast, Paola Samuel is on a birthright mission to Israel, a community mission to Israel. And due to the breakout of the war with Iran, they are trying to make their way home. They are now in Cyprus. Before she got to Cyprus, Paola put together this report.
We all came to Israel about a week ago, although it seems like years ago, with the very same goal. We came to volunteer and to come back to Israel. Many of us, if not most of us, hadn't been here since October 7th. There are those who hadn't been here since they were teenagers, and still others, this was their very first trip to Israel. And so we all wanted the same thing, to come, to volunteer, to reconnect, to revisit. And for the first few days, we did just that. We got our hands dirty. We planted trees on kibbutzim and flowers. We went onto a vineyard and pulled out weeds. We also toured much of Israel. We got to know Tel Aviv in a whole different way. We went to the Nova site, which was also a very emotional day. But on the morning of the June 13th at 3 a.m., we were woken up by an extremely loud siren. And that's when we jumped down into the shelter for the very first time. And it was at that moment that we realized that everything had changed and that the trip that we had planned was about to take a dramatic turn. From that point on, sirens became a regular occurrence in Tel Aviv. Sometimes we ran down as many as 3 times into the shelter. And although things did feel scary sometimes, we started getting used to it. Even started taking what we jokingly called selfies, a mix between the words of selfie and safe house.
It really feels like a conversion. It's almost like I've become more resilient, understanding of how it is that you can experience something that is intensely war-ish.
After the 2 nights of sirens and bomb shelters, we were then less targeted city of Eilat. And although we still had to be careful and content with sirens, we started to absorb the famous resilience of Israelis, being careful but still enjoying every moment and celebrating life.
I would say getting into the shelter as a group is like having the full experience sometimes of being in Israel, and mixing them both was something special. And I think that having them both, also for the people that been here also a number of times, so for the people that is their first or second time in Israel, made this experience a very special experience, and I would say even a full experience.
As worried as people might be for me, my family, might be for me back in Montreal, if I had to come back in the same circumstances and under the same situation, hands down, I will do it again.
And for me, it made me understand better what it was really about. Like, they live this on a daily basis, and we hear about it all the time. But this gave me the experience to know, like, this is what they're actually living through, and this is what we're living it through them and through us in a way that's particular. And I'm not regretful at all of this experience.
After a little more than a day in Eilat, we were evacuated via cruise ship to Cyprus, along with more than 1,000 kids from the birthright programs. But as soon as we docked, many of us grabbed the Israeli flag and started to sing and dance, determined to show our love, passion, and even deeper connection to the land of Israel. And most of us agreed that if we had to do it all over again, we wouldn't change a single part of this unexpected experience. Federation CJA, I'm Paola Samuel in Cyprus.
Did you know aggressive protesters are targeting our synagogues, schools, and community centers? As universities shirk their duty to protect Jewish students and police stand idly by, Federation CJA is taking the lead. We've invested in court-ordered injunctions that now protect over 30 community buildings, assisted Jewish professionals, teachers, and students in their efforts to preserve their rights as everyday citizens. And we will continue to actively pursue every and all legal avenue to defend our community. We're maintaining sustained legal pressure as we continue to safeguard our community's interests and uphold our rights, advocate for the application of the rule of law on campuses and on our streets, and liaise with all levels of law enforcement to ensure the security of our community and institutions. We can do it with your help. Visit federationcja.org to contribute today.
Technical production by Bruno Vargas. Podcast reporters are Jordan Stupler and Paola Samuel.
Contribution by Amanda Sobel, Hillary Cohn, and Dahlia Putterman on social media. I'm Dan Laxer.
For the Federation CJA 360 podcast, I'm Glenn J. Nashon.
Thanks for listening. To find out more about the work we do at Federation CJA, the impact we have on the Montreal Jewish community in Israel and around the world, visit us at federationcja.org, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Until next time, shalom.